Welcome back to the channel. This will be the best wildcard team for Matchday 6 as we enter the semi-final stage. There are 4 teams remaining in Fluminense, Chelsea, Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid. The first game that will take place is on the 8th of July between Fluminense and Chelsea, and then on the 9th of July we have a mouth-watering tie which could easily be the final itself between Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain. I'll be covering even more things in my team selection podcast where I have 5 free transfers and I'll be aiming to match this best wildcard squad that you see today, and I'll delve into injury updates, team news, differentials, budget picks, you name it. By watching my 2 videos coming up and the deadline stream, you'll be well prepared for the upcoming deadline and also for Matchday 7, which I'll talk about very soon. That's its own kind of entity because you can't make substitutions or change the captaincy, but you still can in Matchday 6, and I'll talk about the best 50-man squad and the pool of players you should consider, and also the kind of standout picks from every single club, because some of you might have a different prediction and maybe expect Fluminense to reach the final, even though most of us would go the other way in terms of that particular prediction. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, whether it's FPL, UCL Fantasy, or the Club World Cup. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the other links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. Leave a 5-star review if possible. It goes a long way to supporting the channel even further. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. As I've highlighted throughout all of my knockout stage content, we do have a $5 million increase to our budget from Matchday 4. So we have 105 million to work with, and nothing has changed in terms of player prices. They have remained fixed from the very beginning, and that's something that was established in the rules, and I talked about that in the how to play guide. So I'll start off with the 2 goalkeepers. You've only got 4 to choose from now, and you could easily go for any single one of them. They are all solid picks in their own right, and you don't need to worry about having 2 goalkeepers for Matchday 7 because it's all about the starting 11 for the Club World Cup final, and you only need 1 goalkeeper for that particular match day. But for this one, if possible, I think having 2 is ideal, and you want to avoid a clash and not go for Fabio and Robert Sanchez simultaneously. The same goes for Courtois and Donnarumma at the same time, even though you could argue they are the best goalkeepers in isolation, but those attackers from Paris Saint-Germain and Real Madrid would definitely be the most enticing options, so to speak. And in terms of clean sheet probabilities, that will be discussed in the deadline stream once we have all the odds for goal scorers and everything else that you need to know. But I think Chelsea might be the most likely to keep a clean sheet in Matchday 6. Because of this, Robert Sanchez features in this best wildcard team, despite the fact that he has the least points of any of the semi-finalist goalkeepers. Fabio has the most with 34, followed by Donnarumma, who's only 1 behind him, and Courtois is 3rd with 24 points in the Club World Cup. Sanchez is 10 behind him, so you could definitely make a case for going for other goalkeepers instead. You might back Chelsea to go through to the final, but still go for Fabio between the sticks. That is also a viable strategy, and his ceiling would be higher than Robert Sanchez. And there is also the possibility that no team in the semi-finals will keep a clean sheet, but I think Chelsea are the most likely, and that's why I've gone for the Spaniard between the sticks. The other choice is Donnarumma. It's a very close call between him and Courtois, but I do back PSG a little bit more than Real Madrid, and I also think their defense is much more solid than Los Blancos, who have been very decent in recent games, especially offensively, but against Borussia Dortmund, they're 3-0 up and they concede twice, and it becomes a bit of a nervy affair towards the very end. So Real Madrid can always have that sort of thing. We've seen it even when they've won Champions Leagues. They can concede multiple goals and chances. I think PSG are a little bit more solid, and against Bayern Munich, they conceded no big chances whatsoever, and that's why Robert Sanchez and Donnarumma are the 2 goalkeepers. No defender has more points than Achraf Hakimi, who has accumulated 47 in this campaign. Freitas is the closest, and there's a 10-point difference between the 2. So Hakimi is in a league of his own. I don't think he played particularly great against Bayern Munich. He made a lot of mistakes, bad touches and stuff like that, but guess what he does towards the end of the game? He provides the assist for Dembele's winning goal to secure that victory and make it 2-0, despite the fact they went down to 9 men against Bayern Munich. But Hakimi is fixture-proof. He is getting double-digit return after double-digit return, and he is almost essential. And to be honest, I think he is actually. He's the only defender who I think has to be in your team, even though he's facing Real Madrid, who can always score goals, and they've got so much firepower between their ranks. And Gonzalo Garcia, who is someone that no one really talked about, is having a great tournament, but I still think PSG have a decent defence, and Hakimi always offers that attacking potential. The next option, though, will be Trent Alexander-Arnold, and you could just go for Fran Garcia. I think any one of them is absolutely fine, and if you're backing Real Madrid to keep a clean sheet or just go through to the final, why not go for Trent and Fran Garcia simultaneously? The only reason why is because PSG can still score multiple goals, and it could be a high-scoring thriller. You've also got Courtois in goal to maybe be another option to cover Real Madrid defensively. And Dean Howson obviously is suspended now. We have a lot of suspensions to talk about, not just Levi Colwill, but Freites, also William Bachor, who was sent off against Bayern Munich. But I think Trent still justifies that price tag, and he got 10 points in Matchday 5. And also, there's a bit of element of fortune there because he was subbed off slightly early, and afterwards, Dortmund scored twice. So you need a bit of luck sometimes with these defenders, and Trent does get subbed off quite often, I think around 60-70 minutes from last season at Liverpool, and that could also be in your advantage at times, as it was for those that owned him in the quarterfinals. But the third option will be very template, and to be honest, a lot of these defenders are at this stage of the competition, but Cucurella is my favourite Chelsea defender, especially with the suspension of Levi Colwill, who also qualified for the scouting bonus at the time. I don't think that would have been the case if he didn't pick up that suspension, because we are now very limited in our options, and a lot of us will gravitate towards the same players, especially in positions like this, in this defensive line. But I think Cucurella has that attacking threat. We just haven't really seen it in this tournament. He only has 10 points in this competition, but I still think he has that big ceiling and also big haul in him, and it could happen in the semi-final stage against Fluminense. But there's two options left here in this position, and one of them will be Nuno Mendes. I think the biggest criticism this wildcard team will probably receive is that it's tripling up on PSG defensively, even though they're facing Real Madrid, who can be so potent in their attacking line. But Nuno Mendes has attacking threat himself. You've also got Hakimi, and then Donnarumma versus Courtois. I'm backing PSG a little bit more to reach the final and also win this competition, and that's why I've gone for this sort of structure. But if you want to balance it a little bit more, you can go for Courtois instead of Donnarumma, or Fran Garcia taking the place of Nuno Mendes. But no matter what you do not displace Hakimi. That's the only thing I can recommend at this stage of the campaign. But the final option will be from Fluminense. It's about time we have one of their options in this position, and that's going to be Samuel Javier, who got the assist in the quarterfinals, and he only cost 4.2 million. With Freites suspended, he is now the clear standout, and his ownership has risen to over 6%, so he no longer qualifies for the scouting bonus as he did back in Matchday 5. But I do like the balance of this defensive line. The triple up in PSG might be a little bit too much for some people, and you could even turn that into a triple up in Chelsea defensively if you wish. And don't discount Fluminense if you are maybe backing them a little bit more. Fabio instead of Sanchez could definitely be a good play. There are many different ways of tackling the semi-finals, and ultimately some double, triple or quadruple ups, even defensively, could work to your advantage. In my recent videos and live streams, I was extremely bullish on Doué, who didn't produce a single goal or assist before Matchday 5 when he scored the opening goal against Bayern Munich, but I just had a good feeling about him against the Bavarians. He delivered 8 points because he was also booked just before that, but I think Doué is a very solid choice in this position. But PSG have so many. João Neves is the high-scoring midfielder in this game so far. Vitinha's on penalties, and he's also quite competitive. Ousmane Dembele is now back in the equation. He hit the crossbar and then scored the second goal against Bayern Munich. Not to mention Kvaratskhelia, who has had a decent tournament so far, especially match days 1 and 3, but he can be inconsistent when it comes to goal contributions. But just take your pick. Fabian Ruiz is another one who can deliver at the big stage. For example, in the semi-finals of the Champions League, he scored a great goal against Arsenal. So there are different ways of covering this PSG midfield, and I think it's worth doubling up with Ousmane Dembele right now. If you have the funds, go for Dembele and Doué simultaneously. And if you are following this wildcard guide, then you will be able to afford this because everyone has the same team value at 105 million overall. But Dembele looked really sharp in Matchday 5 a much better performance than the one we saw against Inter Miami, and something similar can be said about Kylian Mbappe, who also scored in the quarterfinals. I think both of them are explosive players and they're worth the price tag, and they could start in the semi-finals here for the upcoming deadline. But I'm now going to cover different teams, and there will be another midfield double-up with Chelsea and Cole Palmer, who scored the opening goal against Palmeiras, and he's a very solid choice in general. Now, for some reason, he made 2 key passes in that game, but they weren't added because normally a midfielder who makes 2 chances or creates 2 chances, they gain an additional point. But we didn't see that with Cole Palmer, so hopefully they do add that, but that's a bit of a strange one, the fact he hasn't gotten that 9-pointer, which he should be getting. But still 8 points, especially for those that captain him like myself, a very decent return. And I do think Cole Palmer is now kind of easing into things and showing better form as we get deeper into the competition. He also got 2 assists against Benfica, so I think his confidence is back and he's going to start scoring and assisting on a more regular basis, because in this calendar year, I think he has dropped off quite significantly, but he's still one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. The next midfielder here, though, will be Pedro Neto, and I think he played relatively well in Matchday 5. Obviously, he would have been absolutely distraught after the events that happened recently, but he did really well to recover, and also just to travel there in such short notice, and just the way he's handled it is really good. And I also think Neto has been excellent in this competition. He has scored on 3 occasions. I don't think his goal scoring in general is particularly great, to be quite honest with you, but I do like Pedro Neto as a winger, his dribbling ability, his directness, and he also has a lot of creativity. He does put a good cross in, and he's a very dangerous winger to kind of deal with. But in Club World Cup fantasy and stuff like this, you can always be put off him a little bit because of his goal record in general, but I do think he's delivered in this competition, and he's my second favourite Chelsea midfielder overall. But Enzo Fernandez is yet another option to consider, and up front I would avoid Jackson, João Pedro and Delap, because they're going to share minutes between those 3, and they also just don't get the minutes necessary. If there was kind of a 90-minute guaranteed striker for Chelsea, I'd be on board with that, but that is not the case, especially in the Club World Cup so far. So stick with Palmer, Pedro Neto and Enzo Fernandez in my opinion, and you'll be fine. I also think Chelsea are worth having 4 or 5 players from. And remember, at this stage of the competition, you can pick 6 players from the same club. This increases to 8 for the Club World Cup final in Matchday 7 as well. But the final midfielder is from Real Madrid, and it's not Jude Bellingham, who has been a big disappointment in the knockout stages. But Arda Güler got 2 assists against Borussia Dortmund, and even if he's playing a deeper role, I think he's playing brilliantly so far. He might even be Real Madrid's player of the tournament, but you've also got Gonzalo Garcia and Fran Garcia to contend with for that particular kind of role and also accolade. But I think Güler is having a great tournament, and he's only getting better and better. And under Xabi Alonso, I think he's going to have a prominent role in La Liga and the Champions League next season, and he's well worth the money at 6.5 million. But some notable absentees include Kvaratskhelia, Vitinha, João Neves, Jude Bellingham, and I also think Arias from Fluminense. But you've also got Hercules, who is scoring the goals recently against Inter Milan, and I think he could be a really good option here. He also scored in Matchday 5, of course, but I think this midfield setup looks really solid. You've got 2 midfield double-ups for PSG and Chelsea, and you're covering Real Madrid with their most informed midfielder in Arda Güler. The position we're most limited in is the forward line, in my personal opinion. You do have a few other options to consider, like the Chelsea ones, but I just don't think their minutes warrant that sort of, I'd say, risk, in my opinion. They might not be the most expensive, but I think it's kind of like a lottery and playing a bit of roulette if you're picking Jackson, João Pedro or Delap, and even if they start, they can be sobbed off before 60 minutes, and that is just far from ideal. I had that with Delap, even though he scored for me when I picked him. He didn't even play 60 minutes, so that's a major concern. But Germán Cano will still get 60-70 minutes at the very least. He is approaching the end of his career, and it was probably 2 or 3 years ago when he had his best spell for Fluminense, but he can still score crucial goals, as he did against Inter Milan, the opening goal there. And Germán Cano was disappointing in Matchday 5, but I'm still quite bullish that he can do the business in Matchday 6, even if Chelsea were to go through to that final. But I think the best way of covering this position is having 2 Real Madrid forwards, and one of them will be Gonzalo Garcia, who has 38 points, the most of any forward, and by some distance. Germán Cano is second with 20, and Vinicius Jr. is third with 19. The rest have pretty poor figures overall, to be honest, but I think a major reason why is because arguably the best striker in world football in Kylian Mbappe has been injured, but he looked sharp against Borussia Dortmund and scored a brilliant goal in that 3-2 victory, and I'd also go for him. You could definitely argue that having Mbappe and Gonzalo Garcia is counterproductive because you'll probably see one start and the other one benched, but I also think we could see something similar to Matchday 5, where Garcia starts, he scores, Mbappe comes off the bench and also scores, and Vinicius Jr. hasn't really shown the consistency in this calendar year, and he's had a poor season overall from my perspective. He's still a quality player. We saw what he can do against Red Bull Salzburg in Matchday 3. He delivered a massive return there, but he has blanked in every other game, and that's simply not good enough for an 11 million forward. But you can still go for him and Mbappe simultaneously, but it would mean downgrading one of your midfielders to a really cheap option, maybe for example Dembele to Arias. I'll show you some alternatives towards the end of this video, but first and foremost I'm going to show you the starting 11 of this squad, talk about the captaincy. We've only got 2 options now, and that's where the power captain, aka the maximum captainship, can come into play, but I still think Matchday 7 could be the best time to deploy that chip. If you check out my latest draft and also first draft videos for Matchday 4, I did dissect an updated chip strategy guide, so you've got a good idea of the best time to use every single booster. You might still have the 12th man or the wild card, maybe even the qualification booster as well, but let me discuss the starting 11 first, talk about some details, maybe iron out a few things, especially for newcomers, and then I'll discuss even more alternatives in every single position. When organizing your lineup, you want to toggle it by day on the app or the Club World Cup Fantasy website and have the Chelsea and Fluminense players in your starting 11 and then captain either a Chelsea or Fluminense asset. That's very simple, and my recommendation would be Cole Palmer for the armband, but maybe you're backing Fluminense instead, and the likes of Arias, if you go for him, maybe Germán Gano could be very good differentials, so to speak. But in goal, I've got Robert Sanchez and a back 4 of Hakimi, Alexander-Arnold, Cucurella and Samuel Javier, then a midfield of Doué, Dembele, Cole Palmer, who is the captain, Pedro Neto, Mbappe and Gano. That is the starting 11 with a bench of Donnarumma, Nuno Mendes, Arda Güler and Gonzalo Garcia, but you can obviously change things a little bit in every single area, which I'm going to show you in the next section. And the second captain I'd go for is actually very difficult because Real Madrid still have a chance of going through. They've got so much firepower and Mbappe could be the difference maker, but I'd be looking at either Dembele or Mbappe, and that all depends on your kind of prediction for that match. I think PSG have a slightly better chance of going through, and this will be one of the rare occasions where I won't recommend Hakimi as a captain. This might age horribly, and he has been absolutely brilliant in terms of Club World Cup fantasy points recently, but I would favour the midfielders and attackers from this game, and I think Dembele and Mbappe would be the standouts. The main changes would be in the midfield and forward line, so downgrading a player like Dembele to Arias or a similarly priced midfielder would give you the funds to upgrade Gonzalo Garcia to Vinicius Jr. But is it really worth it at this stage? Maybe not, when you consider the form of both of those strikers or forwards. I think Vinicius Jr. has the ability to produce in the semi-final and potentially the final if Real Madrid make it there, but he hasn't really been consistent enough in this season, so it is very difficult to kind of back him as much as Mbappe or even Gonzalo Garcia at this moment in time. But that's something you can do a little bit differently, and across every single position, if I were to make a few modifications, I think Donnarumma out for Courtois is more likely than bringing Fabio for Robert Sanchez, but maybe you feel differently about that because I think Fabio has been absolutely fantastic in this tournament, and if you are backing Fluminense to cause an upset or keep a clean sheet, then they could definitely be worth the investment in this position. So don't discount Fabio, he is still a very good option, and honestly I think with all of these goalkeepers it's very close between every single one of them. In this defensive line I'd keep Hakimi no matter what, and amongst Chelsea defenders you might want to go for a differential like Badiashile, Chalobah or Tosin Adarabioyo, but only 2 of them will start in the absence of Levi Colwill, so you could get it wrong by picking one of those centre backs, and they have been rotated quite a lot in this competition, and that could be a sign of things to come in the upcoming Premier League season, and to be honest, it's something we have seen very recently with all these Chelsea centre-backs, with the exception of Levi Colwill, who is suspended. In the Fluminense defence, you've got Thiago Silva in there, Freitas is suspended, but Samuel Javier remains my favourite option, and none of them will qualify for the scouting bonus really, not Thiago Silva or Samuel Javier at least. And in this defense, I think Fran Garcia over Trent is another consideration you could make, especially if you're going to try to find a way of having Mbappe, Vinicius, Palmer, and Dembele all in the same team. So that's one way you can find the funds, by downgrading Trent to Fran Garcia, who has been in my squad from, well, since Matchday 1 actually. He's been a really good asset, one of the very best defenders in the business, with 35 points accumulated in this competition. And in the midfield, something else you can go for over Pedro Neto is João Neves, who has been outstanding in the knockout stages, scoring a brace against Inter Miami, getting an assist against Bayern Munich, and also getting those tackle points on a regular basis. But there are many different ways of covering these teams, but I think ultimately what you've seen in this video are the players that you should really focus on in the goalkeeper position, defense, midfield, and forward line. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you feel differently? Is there one player I haven't really covered enough and you think there will be a great option for the semi-finals and potentially for Matchday 7 as well? But let's see what's in store for us in the Club World Cup. We are approaching the end of this tournament and it has been a pleasure covering it. And keep your eyes peeled for UCL Fantasy and FPL videos and live streams very soon. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Which structure do you prefer? The one with Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe up front, so having two premium attackers, but at the expense of Dembele in the midfield, and then downgrading him to someone like Arias, or then having the Frenchman from PSG in that position, and then Gonzalo Garcia up front instead of Vinicius Jr. I'm going for the Gonzalo Garcia and Dembele route at the moment. I think that's the best way to approach the semi-finals. But one other thing to consider is the balance of every single club. Do you go all in on someone like Chelsea and have 6 players from their team and then maybe 1 or 2 from Fluminense? That's something else you want to maybe weigh up when making your transfers or wildcard in Matchday 6. And then from PSG and Real Madrid, I think it should be a little bit more balanced, but I would favour PSG ever so slightly, but never count out Los Blancos, especially when it comes to cup competitions, and we've seen that time after time again in the Champions League. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content for Club World Cup Fantasy, FPL, and the Champions League. Follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the other links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, further to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, Club World Cup Fantasy League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. A 5-star review would also go a long way to supporting the channel. I'll see you very soon for more Matchday 6 content. That includes my team selection podcast with 5 free transfers at my disposal. And once more, I'll be going live for the semi-finals.